We are, by our very nature, social creatures. And this fact, this fundamental aspect of human psychology, creates one of the most expensive and persistent traps in modern life. Charlie Munger understood this with crystalline clarity. Humans don't just seek survival, they seek status, validation, and the warm comfort of belonging. This impulse is so deeply wired into our evolutionary programming that most people never question it. They simply obey it, like puppets dancing to strings they cannot see. From childhood, we are trained in the art of seeking approval. The child who performs well receives praise. The teenager who dresses correctly gains acceptance. The young professional who displays the right symbols earns respect. Layer by layer, year by year, society builds into us a profound and largely unconscious dependence on external validation. We learn, without anyone explicitly teaching us, that our worth is not intrinsic. It is conferred by others. Munger would call this precisely what it is, an incentive system. And the first principle of understanding human behavior is this: incentives drive everything. Show me the incentive and I'll show you the outcome. The incentive structure of modern society rewards conformity, display, and the appearance of success. It punishes independence, frugality, and the quiet accumulation of real wealth. Most people, being rational responders to incentives, choose the former path without realizing they've made a choice at all. Consider how financial decisions become contaminated by this need for approval. A young lawyer doesn't buy a German luxury car because it's the optimal transportation solution. He buys it because it signals arrival, competence, and membership in a desired social class. A family doesn't move to an expensive neighborhood primarily for the schools. They move for the address, for what it communicates to colleagues and relatives. A woman doesn't purchase designer handbags for their superior functionality. She purchases the logo, the story, the invisible badge of belonging. This is where Munger's thinking becomes ruthlessly clarifying. He identified the bias of social proof, the tendency to think and act as others around us think and act. When everyone in your professional circle drives a certain type of car, lives in a certain type of neighborhood, and vacations in certain types of places, the pressure to conform becomes nearly irresistible, not because of explicit coercion, but because of something far more powerful: the fear of being excluded, of being judged, of being seen as lesser. The reciprocity bias compounds this problem. When your colleagues invite you to expensive dinners, you feel obligated to reciprocate at the same level. When your neighbors upgrade their homes, you feel the invisible pressure to keep pace. When your friends share photos of exotic vacations, you feel the gnawing sense that you're falling behind. This isn't malice, it's human nature. But human nature, left unexamined, is extraordinarily expensive. What makes this trap so insidious is its invisibility. People don't wake up and consciously decide, today I will destroy my financial future to gain the approval of people whose opinions shouldn't matter to me. The process is subtle, gradual, and wrapped in the comfortable language of deserving, celebrating, and living well. But beneath the pleasant surface, something destructive is happening. Financial decisions, which should be made with cold rationality and clear long-term thinking, are being outsourced to the crowd, to fashion, to the fleeting and fickle judgment of others. Munger observed that intelligent people are not immune to this. They're often more vulnerable. High-achieving professionals frequently earn substantial incomes, which creates the dangerous illusion that they can afford the lifestyle markers their social circle expects. They can afford the house payment, the car lease, the private school tuition. Barely. And barely is exactly where the trap closes. They're earning well but building nothing, caught in what Munger would recognize as a treadmill of sophisticated consumption, running faster and faster while remaining financially in the same place. The tragedy is that this behavior is entirely predictable. Given the incentive structure, given that society rewards display and punishes invisibility, most people will choose approval over accumulation. They will choose comfort today over freedom tomorrow. They will choose to fit in over standing apart. And in making these choices, repeated thousands of times across a lifetime, they will pay an enormous price they never fully calculate. This is not a moral judgment. Munger wasn't interested in moralizing. He was interested in understanding. And what he understood was this: the human need for social approval, when combined with the incentive structures of modern consumer society, creates a predictable pattern of financial self-sabotage. The pattern is so common, so widespread, that it's almost invisible, like water to a fish. But once you see it clearly, once you understand the mechanism, the question becomes unavoidable. What is the actual cost of this approval we're buying? And is the price we're paying worth what we're receiving? The answer, examined honestly and completely, is almost always no. To understand the true cost of seeking social approval, we must apply one of Munger's most powerful mental models: inversion. Don't just ask what approval-seeking gains you, ask what it costs you. And not just in obvious ways, but in the compounding, opportunity cost-laden ways that only become visible when you think clearly about time and money. The immediate costs are easy to see, though people work remarkably hard not to see them. The luxury car that costs $70,000 instead of the reliable vehicle that costs $25,000. The house in the prestigious neighborhood that costs $800,000 instead of the perfectly adequate home that costs $400,000. The designer wardrobe, the club memberships, the constant dining at fashionable restaurants. Individually, these are lifestyle choices. Collectively, they represent something else entirely: a sustained hemorrhage of capital that should be working for you, but instead is being fed into the insatiable appetite of social comparison. But Munger would push deeper, because the visible costs are just the beginning. The real damage lies in what economists call opportunity cost, the value of the best alternative you sacrificed when you made your choice. Every dollar spent on approval-seeking is a dollar that cannot be invested. And here's where the mathematics becomes brutal. Imagine two individuals, both earning $150,000 annually. The first, call him John, lives at the upper edge of his means. Nice house, nice car, nice everything, all the markers of success his peers expect. He saves perhaps 5% of his income. The second, call her Sarah, lives well below her means in a modest home and drives a 5-year-old car. She saves and invests 30% of her income. Over 30 years, assuming reasonable market returns, Sarah will accumulate wealth John cannot even comprehend. Not just more wealth, exponentially more wealth. The difference isn't in their intelligence or earning power. The difference is in their willingness to endure social discomfort. This is compound interest working in reverse. Every approval-seeking decision compounds negatively over time. The expensive lease payment isn't just $800 this month. It's $800 every month for years. Money that could have been compounding at 8 to 10% annually in a diversified portfolio. Over a decade, that's not $96,000 spent. It's $96,000 spent, plus the investment returns you never earned, plus the returns on those returns. The true cost might be $200,000 or more. For a car that depreciates to nearly nothing. Munger understood that most people cannot think this way naturally. Our brains didn't evolve to calculate compound interest over 30-year periods. We evolved to respond to immediate social threats and opportunities. The fear of being judged by your neighbors today is psychologically vivid and urgent. The abstract possibility of being financially independent in 3 decades is distant and unreal. So people consistently, predictably, choose the psychologically comfortable path, not understanding that they're trading long-term freedom for short-term acceptance. The costs cascade in other ways too. The high fixed expenses that come with approval seeking create fragility. When your lifestyle requires $10,000 per month in after-tax income just to maintain, you become trapped in your job, unable to take risks, unable to negotiate from strength, unable to walk away from toxic situations. You've built a beautiful cage and voluntarily entered it. Munger would note the irony: you bought expensive things to signal success and freedom, but what you actually purchased was dependence and constraint. There's also what we might call the psychological cost, though it manifests financially. The person constantly measuring themselves against others, constantly upgrading to keep pace, never feels satisfied. There's always someone with a bigger house, a nicer car, a more exotic vacation. This hedonic treadmill doesn't just waste money, it wastes life. You're working to earn money, to buy things to impress people, most of whom are too busy trying to impress you to notice what you're doing. Munger saw that the greatest fortunes are built not by those who earn the most, but by those who keep the most and invest it wisely over long periods. Warren Buffett, his longtime partner, famously lived in the same modest Omaha house he bought in 1958 for $31,500. Not because he couldn't afford more, but because upgrading would have been financially irrational and psychologically meaningless. The money he didn't spend on housing compounded into billions. This is the pattern wealth builders understand. Every dollar not wasted on impression management is a soldier you can send out to capture more territory. Every dollar spent on approval is a soldier who dies on the battlefield of vanity, never to return. The mathematics are simple. The psychology is hard. The person seeking approval tells themselves they're living well, they're successful, they deserve nice things. And perhaps they do deserve them. But deserving and affording are different concepts. You can deserve a Ferrari and still be a fool to buy one. Munger's insight was that most consumption beyond genuine utility and comfort is simply money incinerated for psychological relief. Relief from the anxiety of not measuring up. The final cost is perhaps the most subtle. Time. High consumption requires high income, which requires long hours, which requires sacrificing the freedom that money is supposed to buy. You work 60 hours a week to maintain a lifestyle that requires you to work 60 hours a week. The logic is circular, but the trap is real. Meanwhile, the person who lives below their means accumulates capital, and capital eventually buys what approval never can: autonomy, options, and genuine security. This is the hidden cost that Munger would want us to calculate. Not just what you spend, but what you never build. Not just what you buy, but what you never become. Financial independence isn't purchased with a high income. It's purchased with a high savings rate maintained over time. And the greatest barrier to a high savings rate isn't a low income, it's an expensive identity. Charlie Munger's life was, in many ways, a case study in independence of thought. He didn't become wealthy by following the crowd. He became wealthy by thinking differently, acting differently, and being comfortable standing apart. And this is where his most important insight connects to our theme. Financial independence and intellectual independence are not separate things. They're two sides of the same coin. To achieve financial freedom, you must first achieve psychological freedom, freedom from the need for external validation. This is harder than it sounds, much harder. It requires you to confront something deeply uncomfortable, that most of what you think you want because others want it, or because others expect you to want it. Your desires are not entirely your own. They've been shaped, molded, and installed by a society that profits from your insecurity. Munger would start with a simple question: whose approval are you actually seeking? Look at the people whose opinions seem to matter, whose judgment influences your choices, whose lifestyle you're trying to match. Now ask honestly, Are these people leading lives you truly admire, or are they simply participating in the same status competition that's exhausting you? Are they financially secure, or are they on the same treadmill you're on? In most cases, you're working desperately to earn the approval of people who are quietly drowning in debt and anxiety themselves. This realization is liberating if you can accept it. The audience you're performing for isn't even paying attention. They're too busy performing their own show. The colleague you're trying to impress with your car is worried about what you think of his house. The neighbor you're trying to match with your renovation is anxious about her own financial precarity. Everyone is so focused on managing their own image that they barely notice yours. You're destroying your financial future for an audience that doesn't exist. Munger's approach to life was built on a different foundation. Rationality over emotion, long-term thinking over short-term comfort, and reality over appearance. He understood that true wealth, both financial and psychological, comes from aligning your behavior with your actual long-term interests, not with the temporary opinions of others. This requires what he called intellectual independence, the ability to think clearly and act decisively, even when it means standing apart from the crowd. Consider what this means practically. It means driving a reliable but unimpressive car while your income grows. It means living in a modest neighborhood while your investments compound. It means saying no to expensive social obligations without elaborate explanations or apologies. It means, in short, being willing to appear less successful than you are rather than more successful than you are. This inverts the normal pattern, and inversion, as Munger taught, is often where wisdom lies. The psychological challenge is real. When you step off the treadmill of consumption and status-seeking, you will feel the discomfort of being different. Some relationships will become strained, some people will judge you, some invitations will stop coming. This is not a bug, it's a feature. The people who fall away are the ones whose connection to you was based on shared consumption patterns, not genuine affinity. What you lose in superficial relationships, you gain in clarity, freedom, and capital. Munger believed that a small amount of discomfort today buys an enormous amount of freedom tomorrow. The person who can tolerate being underestimated, who can endure the mild social awkwardness of not keeping up, who can face the raised eyebrows and unasked questions, that person is building something real while others are building an image. And when enough time passes, when the compounding works its magic, the difference becomes impossible to ignore. Financial independence means having options. It means being able to walk away from jobs that drain you, relationships that diminish you, and situations that compromise your values. It means not lying awake at night worried about money. It means having time, which is the only resource you can never replenish. These are not abstract luxuries. They are the foundation of a good life. And they're available to almost anyone willing to pay the price of temporary social discomfort. Here's what Munger would say if he were speaking directly to you. The crowd is almost always wrong about money. If you do what everyone else does with money, you'll get what everyone else gets, which is not much. Most people retire with inadequate savings, dependent on family or government support, their freedom constrained by decisions made decades earlier. If you want a different outcome, you must make different decisions. And different decisions feel uncomfortable precisely because they're different. The path to wealth is not complicated. Spend significantly less than you earn. Invest the difference in productive assets. Wait patiently while compound interest works. Avoid debt, avoid fees, avoid trying to get rich quickly. These principles are simple but psychologically demanding because they require you to prioritize future freedom over present status. Most people cannot do this. They read the principles, they nod in agreement, and then they lease a luxury car because everyone at work has one. Akul. The question you must answer is this: are you willing to be unusual? Are you willing to be misunderstood? Are you willing to drive a boring car, live in an ordinary house, and skip the expensive vacation, knowing that you're building something far more valuable than any of those things could provide? If you can answer yes, and more importantly, if you can act on that yes consistently over many years, then financial independence is almost inevitable. The math guarantees it. Munger's final insight on this topic is perhaps his most important. True freedom requires discipline. The person who cannot control their spending will never be free, no matter how much they earn. The person who needs external validation will always be controlled by others, no matter how much they achieve. But the person who can think independently, act rationally, and tolerate temporary discomfort, that person is already wealthy in the ways that matter most. The money is simply the logical consequence of the mindset. So the choice is yours, and it's a choice you make every day with every financial decision. You can have the approval of people who don't really matter, or you can have freedom. You can look successful, or you can be secure. You can keep up with the crowd, or you can pull ahead of it. You cannot have both. And the cost of choosing wrong compounds every single day. Choose wisely. The future you will be grateful or resentful. The difference is in what you decide today.